Namaskar, welcome to AdiYogiAyurveda. My name is Madhu. So today we have a special episode that I promised you guys a while ago. And I have a special guest here today, Candi.
Hello.
Welcome. So a little bit of introduction to my channel. I actually am a Ayurveda lifestyle consultant, Vedic counselor, QHHT practitioner, a Reiki healer and energy healer who does her own healing frequency with the higher self and with the guides. And I have I do like tarot card readings and things like that. You can check all the services out on my website. So to speak about what we're going to be discussing in this video, I will let Candi do that and introduce herself. First of all, to all of you guys, to let you know what she does and where she specializes in. So I'll hand it over to you, Candi, to introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you for having me. And the reason that I'm doing this video right now is because I did a past life regression and we uncovered some really interesting information that was also very helpful for my healing journey. So that's why we're doing this. And also I am a victim, a survivor of satanic ritual abuse and generational abuse. And I've come a long way with that. So I'm hoping that over time I'll be able to help others work through their issues and also to help unveil the secrets that are hidden. The reasons that this is done throughout society and how it hides behind hierarchy and groupings is my my hope, because I think that without the information that we're going to be talking about, without people being aware of it, it's just going to continue throughout the whole world, and it's a really, really devastating thing how controlled we are.
Yeah. And if you would like to tell everyone what you would do, what kind of healing sessions that you offer.
All of that's still in the works, so just stay tuned. My links will be below, and feel free to email me. I'm open for interviews based on the information that you see in the description or what you hear here on this video. So just get in contact with me.
So today what we're going to be talking about mainly is the QHHT session that Candi and I did for her. So how we met was through this spiritual chat group, we can say that.
Yeah.
So there was this chat group, and then somehow I was posting a video of my old channel, and she contacted me, and I was offering free QHHT sessions for light workers. And she reached out to me, and then, we started doing the session. And after, I think we did the first part, the interview, and she she fell off the grave. Then after months, she reached out to me back again. And I think we might have done a little bit of healing during that interview. And then she reached out to me, and then we did the session, the actual hypnosis session recently. So this video is discussing about what we found out in that session. So the main point of this is to let everyone know that this rituals and this type of penetration into society has been going on for like thousands of years. So this was one of her lifetimes. It was one of these this time frame where light was in power and the dark was trying to penetrate into the society that was kind of like infiltrated with light. And what we're doing right now is trying to infiltrate into a world filled with dark as the light workers. So
definitely what it feels like.
Yeah, and I found it extremely interesting. So I'll let you speak about it, Candi, and share,
Okay. To not be confusing, I'm going to speak about, it was a past life regression, and there were two different people that we touched on, but I think mainly we're going to talk about the man, and I'm going to speak about him as him and not myself, because I think it makes it more simple, because there's also aspects of this lifetime for me that kind of apply here. So in order to not be confusing. He was an engineer who worked on the pyramids, and he was very intelligent. He loved meditating at the openings of the pyramids, and eventually he was elevated in status somehow and cut off from the community. And then he was given a spiritual position somehow, but he never really understood. It was more like a religious position. He never really understood how or why or what he was supposed to be doing. And I remember throughout the session that I kept feeling from this person's perspective, like, I don't know what this is about. I'm not helping people. I'm not helping people anymore. And, you know, I would think that receiving this kind of a position, I would be helping people. What is going on here? And he could never really get to the bottom of it. And what I find interesting, and we'll get into more details about all of that, but what I find interesting is that it's almost like the life that I've lived here in this lifetime gives me a better understanding of what happened to this man than he had. So it's just, that's kind of strange. It was all really helpful for me to experience this. Yeah. So he was just another member of the community. And then what happened is the powers that be, and it wasn't like any specific ruler or anything, it was the people operating underneath the rulers. Like, he never really spoke with whoever ruled, and I wouldn't even know what their title was, if they were a pharaoh or some kind of monarch. I have no idea, because it just really didn't go there. But the powers that be spoke very highly of him to him, and eventually convinced him that he could bless other people just by speaking with them in certain ways, kind of using that a really gentle voice. And he did notice that people would respond more to that. But one thing that I don't think he was really aware of is that the people who were ruling from behind the scenes were going around and talking him up to other people. So everything was very, very contrived. Anyway, he eventually was convinced that he could bless people. And over time, he became cut off from the community and began living in the palace or whatever, wherever the people who were separated from society lived, because they were elite and better than everybody else. And from there, they started bringing people to him to bless. And eventually, they started bringing young children to him. And it was very slow how they got him involved in, like, even from the beginning, they would bring a child and have him like get down on their level and kind of almost whisper to them and, you know, make them feel positive. And the whole situation felt really wrong to him. But the way that the child would respond would be with a giggle and a smile. And these people who were manipulating him told him that he was blessing them. Like, look at their faces, they're happy, you're doing something good for them. But it all felt very wrong. So it created this duality in him. Like, he felt like it was wrong, but he wanted to believe them that he was doing good. So it created a huge dichotomy in him. Even before that point, because he didn't understand why people were looking up to him so much. He considered himself just another member of the community. So they separated him from people, and then made the people think that he was above them, and then also convinced him that he was. So he became very, very separated from the community. And over time, they started having him work with children. And then they had him start touching them. you know, just on the shoulder, you know, if it, then it will make a physical contact and you'll be blessing them better. And he never really understood what this idea of blessing people was, because it always felt wrong. All of it did. Even whenever they were bringing adults to him to be blessed, it didn't feel right, because he didn't understand that he had any position to be doing that, or authority, or whatever. Like it wasn't even a thing. It wasn't a thing to bless people. It was like it was being made up at that time almost. So eventually they convinced him that if he would molest this young girl, then he would have more power to bless more people. And he never really bought into that, but he ended up doing it anyway, almost out of an inability to talk himself out of it with these people, because they would just talk in circles and be very highly intellectual, and he could keep up with them on that level, but they would basically convince him to go against what he thought was right. But it's almost like he decided to do it because he's like, I am so done with this. I'm done with these people. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get punished, and that'll be the end of this, and they'll get caught, and everything will just come out in the open, and that'll be the end of it. But that's not what happened. He never got caught. As a matter of fact, eventually he was out in the community at one point and saw the girl, and she just acted like absolutely nothing happened. And he was sure that she would be screaming and running and just totally freaked out. But that didn't happen. She just ignored him like everybody else did at that point. Because that was after he was separated from the community. Before that, he would go and interact with people. But it got to the point where, you know, he would ignore everyone else, and everyone else would ignore him because he was out of reach, because he had become some kind of an elite person. So not being punished was a really, really big confusing point for him. And it's almost like nothing really made sense up to that point, but at that point something really broke, and absolutely nothing made sense at all anymore. Eventually, and I believe this was quite a while later, he was promoted somehow within, I guess I would say, some kind of religious position. And the only thing I don't have a title that he was given or anything like that, but he was wearing special robes and had a really, really tall hat that he wore. And just again, the feeling that I had was just, I'm supposed to be helping people. I'm not helping people. And he was so isolated. Another thing I want to mention is that since he was in some kind of I'll just say a palace or something like that, he saw these people going around talking to other people. And by these people, I mean the people that were running things behind the scenes, that were whispering in everybody's ears. They would almost be completely different people depending on who they were talking to. They were very, very manipulative. And anyway, he was eventually killed because they wanted him to kill the girl that he had molested, and he wouldn't do it.
I remember that, like, when you were speaking about, when you were talking about the girl at that time, when you saw her, you were very surprised, like, why she's not screaming, because they made you do very bad things to her. I mean, not you, they made him do very bad things to her, and it was like shocking for him as well as you. And then during the promotion, that was a big party celebration. I remember it was like he was being honored, and he was just like, what is going on, you know?
Mm-hmm. It was almost like he was on the sidelines of that thing. Like, he was wearing the robes, he was wearing the hat. I had a little bit of a memory of him sitting in front of everybody, and everybody was eating. And then other than that, literally, he was on the sidelines. He was out on the side of the room, just standing there, not even like way lower than solemn, just very confused and not understanding what even the celebration was. So, I mean, it was almost, I want to say it was like they were having some kind of a ritual for his promotion, and he didn't understand it. He didn't know what it was. He didn't know what they were doing. There was a huge lack of information for this guy. He did not know what was going on any more than anybody else did. But you would think that he was in a position to be knowing and understanding at least his part. But that's the thing, he didn't even understand his part. The people who were actually in power probably didn't understand their parts either. And all of the other people, of all the different moving gears that had to do with how that society was being run, nobody probably understood their individual part, let alone the bigger picture.
It's very similar to the situation now. It's like the puppet masters are there behind the scene. They never show their face. And then they have the hierarchies of the people. And then they just give the orders, and then the orders go down. And then at the level of the character, not the character, but your lifetime, who you were, he was given that taste of power, the prestige. But at the same time, he was still kept in the dark. He was like, kind of manipulated into doing these things. And by the way, what her role in that lifetime was kind of like infiltrate into the dark forces, to the dark side, to see how they operate and learn. So her job was very important. That was really cool. Like she's like a double agent, right? What do you call them?
Yeah. Gosh, what's astonishing to me sometimes is how this present lifetime has kind of paralleled some of that, but I don't think I want to go into that too much. But another interesting thing is I don't know if I said this earlier, but we touched on 2 lifetimes, and I don't know for certain because there wasn't a knowing that came with it, but I think that the other lifetime that we looked at was the girl that he had molested as an older woman, and how absolutely confused that she was, and not having the information in your mind to understand what's going on around you makes it impossible even for her, who, and she was molested a lot more. She, even as an adult, she was still somehow involved in all of it. They were still molesting her. Somebody somewhere was, and they were torturing her and things like that. Because she never, and drugging her, every time she left, she was very confused about what had happened. But she knew that she couldn't tell anybody because she had enough information that she knew that whatever the common people were working on, that they didn't really understand what those things were going towards. And she didn't even have the words. This is what I'm getting at. She didn't even have the words to be able to tell people, okay, when you do this work and provide this product and it goes to the palace, this is how it's being used, and that's wrong. She just knew that everything, like there was a lot of glut, like everything was being wasted, and people were hungry, and they felt positive about their work. They felt good about their work, but it wasn't going to anything good. So
that's an interesting point too, because it's like all the right, like even right now, they're like the certain people who are in power, they take all the good things, and the regular people, they have to go to work, they have to do all these things, and they're kept kind of distracted from understanding that this is not how life should be. Everyone should be abundant. There is always that lack in the general community, whereas in the upper communities, it's like everything is just being wasted, and they just take everything from the people, and that's one of the other things that really sparked my interest, because I'm thinking this is thousands of years ago, but it's so similar to what they're doing right now.
Yeah, and one of the things about that, leaving people depleted and chasing after money just to have enough to survive, just to not have enough to have a home and have power to your home and clean water, and oh wait, all of our water is fluoridated. You get provided water, and then you got to go out and buy water or buy some filtration system just to be safe and healthy. It creates a situation where people like the woman who was tortured and abused, who was, not even part of the elite, there was no way for her to go to anybody and talk to them, not only because she didn't have the words, but because those people didn't have any frame of reference or understanding to be able to, even if she had the words, they wouldn't understand it, for one. Two, they're too busy trying to survive, and all of their energies going to that, so they wouldn't even be able to conceive of being able to do anything to help the one individual, let alone the situation, the bigger picture situation. So there's just a lot of ways that we are kept from, and then the other thing is, once you, let's just say, once you see behind the veil of information and begin to understand what's really happening, it's scary. It is not pleasant. And this is one of my biggest points, is that it's better to know and be afraid and see that fear than it is to be ignorant, because so many people are suffering because of an unwillingness to see the reality that's going on. I was in a conversation with someone the other day about some political topic, and basically they were saying that, you know what, you can't go around talking about the dark sorcerers out there who are controlling the world, because that sounds crazy and people don't want to hear that and people don't believe it. And I'm like, well, you know what, you can run around chasing your tails trying to solve this stuff through politics, through the government, and it's not going to do any good, because they have mouthpieces there, they have puppets there, they're never really going to change anything. And then another issue that comes up is that, in order for somebody to, or in order for a group of people to be able to get some political agenda through, you have to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that everybody has the same talking points, so that you don't muddy the waters with other pieces of information. And what this is doing is creating another layer of veiled information and ignorance, because it's like they want to let some information out because they're working towards specific agendas. So they use these issues to let some of that information out, but they're really controlling, and you don't really get to the bottom of why these things are happening, or because they're trying to keep hidden themselves so that they can be safe. And they do it through all of these organizations and hierarchical structures. It's maddening. And then the people who really care about a certain issue are more interested in making sure that they can get some kind of political movement. So they hush up anything that's not gonna make the point in the right way to the right people when they're barking up the wrong trees to begin with.
Yeah, and
none of this is going to be solved through that.
Then they have set up like Hollywood to distract people. Before, back in the day, it was like the religious dogmas that kept people in line. Now they have more mechanisms that, like politicians, the military, everything, everyone is involved in these things. And then, like recently, I came across this. This was a huge issue. This satanic ritual abuse in a school in UK. So it has gone to every aspect of our society, but people are still afraid to face it, afraid to even address it. Even Jeffrey Epstein's case, like people it was, I saw recently that they said he wasn't, like they couldn't, like he was convicted and then they cleared his name, I think, I don't know. But people are still so unaware of this case, the situation. And because of that, a lot more people became awakened. Otherwise, it's really difficult to tell people this type of things, and they wouldn't believe it. They just,
I think, go ahead. I think one of the most important things about situations like with Jeffrey Epstein, which honestly, I haven't been keeping up on that because I've been trying to work on myself and do other things. But those people doing those things, don't get me wrong, they are very sick, they are very bad, and they are very evil. However, they are people. They're people. And they are living their lives in a different way than the common person, the average person. Jeffrey Epstein, if he's part of the elite, dark Illuminati, he was probably very, very traumatically abused as a child because they go through this process to try to activate um, ancestral DNA, and I mean, and like superhuman powers and stuff. When you're abused traumatically, you come into access to things through disassociation and other things that happen. So even if these people aren't being manipulated to the point where they're they have a handler who is installing kind of different personalities and creating dichotomy to make a person feel horrible so that they can keep being used, even the elite people are going through very, very traumatic abuse. And ultimately, what I'm trying to say here is we have to begin to understand these people, what is happening to them, how they become what they are. And we as a society really need to start owning that this is really happening. They are part of us as a whole. They are. And also, if we understood what they were doing and had access to which you can get all kinds of occult information out there. There's a lot of occult practices that would be good for people to know and do, and there's other things that it's good to be aware of because it is happening and it is leading to and causing poor little kids not only to be molested and raped and trafficked and wish that they didn't exist. There's also, children being killed to be eaten or being bled to drink their blood. It's really, there's a lot of sick things going on. And if you're the kind of person that sees this come up on the news, which isn't going to give you all the best information anyway, and you're just like, oh my gosh, and you change the channel, yeah, well, I get it. People are really occupied by their own lives, but there's really awful things going on out there, and people need to be aware. And there's one level of awareness, like this happens, and it leads people to think every person like that just needs to be rounded up and shot dead and killed and just gone from the planet.
yeah.
I can understand that, but that isn't going to solve anything. We have to come to understanding and knowledge of what's going on. And I think that, kind of cycles back to your kind of double agent thing, double agent concept of me and my past lifetimes and my present lifetime also. So it's.
I wrote an article about the generational epigenetic inheritance, which is what you were talking about, like that.
I'd like to read that sometime. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I wrote that article, and whatever you said is like, it's so true, because that's what I found out through my research too. Because what they do is through generations they create trauma, and that gets passed on to the future generations, and that's very common with the elite, especially because they have to train and prune their kids to take over, continue on with that. And MK Ultra and Monarch mind control methods are also used. And I feel like that is also done to the regular people too, because we are, we experience different types of traumas, and then now we are carrying this bloodline traumas that we have to heal. So that's like, it's done to everyone, not just like, just if people think that, oh no, that doesn't happen to me. We're all affected at some level, so we have to really be aware, like you said. You have to open your eyes. I was wondering if you want to talk about that ritual that they did to you on that lifetime.
Yeah. At the end of his life, he was chained to a bed and drugged. People that he had blessed in the past or other elites would come to his bed and visit him, and they just thought that he was, near his death and very, very sick, because that's what they were made to believe. He knew that he wasn't capable of telling anybody that. And he was chained to the bed. He couldn't move, and he was delirious over being drugged. What else I remember about that is that he was being made to feel a lot of fear by the way that the people in power were abusing him and scaring him with knives. I believe that he was being bled. I'm not 100% sure about that, because I didn't speak about it during the interview or the past life regression, and I didn't feel it. I personally, Candi, have a feeling that he was, and because I remember he was thinking and very confused about, why are they keeping me alive? Like, he had no idea. I think also they might have been waiting for a specific day to kill him, knowing what I know about astrology. So he was chained, and they made him feel a lot of fear. And he was made to believe that this was happening because he would never kill the girl that he had molested.
Oh, that was why you defied them.
I think that it was his next phase of initiation into their plan, which he wouldn't even understand why they were initiating him, because he was confused, didn't understand, like, had no willingness or want to continue or be a part of it, but they wanted him to kill somebody. And knowing what I know now about how the death cult works, and how they try to get you to do certain things to make you feel enslaved to them, because if you don't do what they say, they have this information they can share with people, and you're screwed. I think that he was not going to continue, as in he was never going to kill anybody, so they decided to use him in a death ritual.
So what the ritual was, I think that they scared him a lot, I think, to get that adrenochrome thing going so that they can take the blood. And then what did they do to you? How did they kill you?
I actually don't remember. I'm sorry. Do you remember how that went?
I remember.
Could you tell us?
Like, tied you down to this thing, and they drained your blood after, like, scaring you. But I think before they drained your blood, didn't they, like, cut your heart out and take your heart out? And then I don't know if they ate it or not, but I remember.
I'm remembering now saying that they were eating it.
Yeah, they took it out. Like, they literally just cut open and just took the heart, and they ate it. And then they drained the blood, and they were chanting while they were doing it too.
Yeah,
I remember that. They were like chanting, and you said you didn't care anymore. You were kind of like...
Yeah, I wasn't even feeling fear anymore, because it had been going on with him tied to the bed for so long. And by so long, I mean days or weeks or a month or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what happened. And that's kind of the same type of rituals that happens now.
Yes.
Innocent people.
To tie this to something you were saying earlier, about this stuff is just way more rampant than people want to believe. I'm just an average girl from a small town, okay? And I thought that I had a really crazy, messed up father who said crazy things and liked to scare me while he was abusing me. And it turns out that the thing, I mean, he would tell me things like he was going to cut my heart out and eat it. And he did all kinds of things to me and told me exactly what he was doing all along and why. I just thought he was crazy. But it turns out that he got a hold of some information. I was told that by him that it was like a family heirloom. He had some special book that had the exact processes to use to do all of the mind control manipulation to me. And also, when he was in the Navy, he worked at the prison in California, I believe, somewhere in San Diego. And he got a lot of information there. They actually had a group of people who would just meet up, and they had this piles and piles of books of information, occulted information that's people try to keep away from the public as much as possible. So, yeah, anyway, to make my point, I'm just some random person. I'm not part of the elite. I was never involved in the military. My family wasn't, it wasn't a military family. He just decided to join the military. When all the information started coming out about MK Ultra, he was very fascinated by that, very intelligent man. Yeah, so I would hazard to guess that many children who are abused are actually part of something bigger than they realize, because there's so much fear involved in remembering these things. That is, the mind is amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and it's going to protect you. When say one day my dad had been abusing me for a couple of days, when it was all over, it'd be like, okay, Candi, it's a brand new day. Everything is wonderful, happy. And I had awful feelings inside of me. But you know what? Being happy and deciding to have a wonderful day and that things were good was what my mind wanted to do. Because also, if I didn't play along to the point where I actually really believed that everything was fine and nothing bad had happened to me, I would have been abused more. It's crazy. Anyway, back to my point, I think that many children who are being abused are part of something more than they realize. Because if it happened to me to that degree, it's a lot. It's got to be so many of the average people who just think that, they were born to the wrong family and that they, just got the short end of the stick, and things like that just happen to some people. Sometimes, no. I really think that a lot of those things that happen are part of something more, and it's part of just this generational abuse that happens. And yeah, my life went on to be highly manipulated into probably my mid-20s or so, and without me being aware, because a lot of the manipulation happened while I was being traumatized, and then it would leave ideas in my head. And I actually ended up going to see a man that I ended up marrying that I never would have seen again. I never would have seen him again had it not been for the fact that I was traumatically abused into, no, you're going to see him again. Apparently they wanted me with him because of his attachments to some organizations, and it's a mess. And I'm just a random girl from some small town. I am nobody special. I never was. So coming to this knowledge that my life was much more manipulated, and that there were people with ideas about how I should and could be used, it's really sad, because it's not like, I was taken from my family and sold into, obvious slavery, kept in a cage my whole life, or it wasn't like that. It's not like that. I mean, for some that it is, and it's sad, but I think I'm repeating myself now, but a lot of the just, oh, my dad was an awful person and liked to do bad things to me. I think that in a lot of those cases, it's a lot more. It's just way more than what it looks like on the surface. And it takes a lot of courage to uncover those memories. And this is where it's sad that the general population is too busy and too afraid to look behind the veil. And I would say to all of those people and anyone listening to this, if you come across information from anybody, I mean, there are people, who start to understand they call it like the matrix code, what agendas are really trying to be pushed through politics, or what's really going on with the media, and how religious and other organizational structures are really not that good. Listen to those people and understand them, but especially anyone who's coming out of some kind of involvement with the dark cult, the death cult. Take them seriously, because there's this split between people who have really seen behind that and are saying, you're barking up the wrong trees. None of this is ever going to be solved through that, because the puppet masters don't want that. And you think you have these little wins through politics, okay, my agenda got through, or, a little piece of it, it's a win. Oh, no, it's not a win. They let that little piece get through because it means that with that piece through, this other piece is weakened. So it will never get through, and it gets pushed back down even more, because the groupings are, the people within the groupings are hushing each other because they're trying to accomplish something through a system that is totally broken.
It's very sad how even okay, forget about the satanic ritual or abuse, but literally I think majority of the household children go through sexual abuse at one point. A lot of children are exposed to that. Even addressing that is called considered a taboo in society.
Yeah.
People should just people really need to open up and understand that these things are happening, and not try to hush, but like you, a real survivor, a real person who went through these things. And sometimes you had your memory kind of locked inside too, because you were so afraid. And even if people you who went through this come out to speak, it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of work to get these memories to come back up. People really need to pay attention to these things and really understand and empathize. And
yes, and it takes having a willingness to be able to see behind that veil in order for, just children being abused on any level, in order for that to come to light and have any kind of resolution. People have to be willing. And I'll say I've heard of situations where, say, an adult becomes aware of something awful that happened to a child that they love. They become aware of it. They know it. They understand it. And then poof, even that memory disappears. Because it's so, they just end up going about their lives in such a normal way and just kind of putting it behind them. And then another situation comes up and they don't see or understand the danger in it, because they have totally blocked that memory after even accepting it. It's almost like you have to hold on to how awful and how horrible some aspects of the world can be and is. And I think that is every single individual's responsibility. It sounds awful, but there's so much other than, do your shadow work, okay? So the spiritual community it has an aspect of, you got to look in your dark places. You got to do your shadow work. I have two things to say about that. You could work your entire lifetime on your own shadow work and never step out and be able to help anybody because you're too stuck in your own shadow. And then the other part of that is, I'm forgot what there's a whole lot of stay positive, be happy, make good energy. But I think
all those people who eat rainbows and shit unicorns.
Yeah, eat rainbows, shit unicorns. I like that.
That's their reality. They don't want to see the actual things that are happening, you know?
I think that humanity would be better served by, like I was saying a moment ago, realize how awful, how dark, how gross, how disgusting things can be and how things are, but also, again, they're people too. They are people. They came to be exactly how they are somehow. And we need to begin to understand how that happened. Because, and if it takes holding on to like or just one realization that you have about how dark and gross things are, no matter how awful it feels. Like, it was just last night, I read a blog post that was about some scientist was saying that if we eat our dead people, I know it's awful, if we even just tasting them, somehow they were rationalizing that if we start eating our dead, it would help with global warming. And I suppose that they're making an argument that, you know, if you raise less meat, less greenhouse effect and stuff like that. But it is, wow, it's such a slippery slope. And with that past life memory that I had and my own life, I'm sorry, people can live without meat. You can. We don't need the global warming caused by the farming industry like it currently is. Anyway, so to suggest that eating people, Soylent Green,
that's actually
suggest that that's a solution over, okay, stop eating meat because it's more problematic than helpful. I don't get it. Anyway, it was clearly someone's agenda to try to start normalizing from eating dead people to, oh, you're pregnant, you don't want your baby, can I eat it?
Yeah, that's what they're doing right now.
That's totally normal. Eventually, that's what they're trying to normalize these things, that and pedophilia and
you know, I want to talk about the Vatican too, because there are so many cases coming out about the Vatican, but everyone is in denial. Like, I come from a Catholic community, so much denial. Oh, I had to get into arguments with certain friends and family members because of this, because they want to stay in denial. That's the biggest flaw of the human race. They want to hide their head under the ground, stay in denial. Do not stay in denial. Admit it, accept it, change it. That's what we need to do.
Yes. And, you know, though, people are so attached to these structures. It's so ingrained in society. And that is one of the key problems. And that is, I think, the biggest piece of reason, the biggest piece of reason that people have a hard time coming out of denial, because they're so attached to these authorities in their lives. And another thing I have written down here on my notes is, like, you asked me what could people take away from this and what could they learn from the lifetime of the man, because everything that he did, he used his own will. He acted in accordance with his will, which was going against his better judgment, but he did what he did. He was heavily influenced, but he did what he did. So, you know yourself, and really, no matter what amount of confusion comes your way, no matter what amount of sweet talking or confused talking or manipulation of the people around you, no matter how close they are to you, no matter how crazy it makes you sound, it is ultimately each individual's responsibility to know yourself and what you will stand for and what you will not.
Exactly. They have this really good way of twisting everything and saying things in a way that manipulates people, especially from religious institutions, because everyone adamantly wants to believe, those things, like hold on to every word and deny what's really going on. So yeah, people, I think what you said is right. Really know yourself and know what you're doing. You are doing this out of free will, yes, but really know what that you're doing this if you're doing something wrong.
Lack of
Go ahead.
lack of information is another problem, but that's where it's the individual's responsibility to, you know, instead of changing the station, be like, oh, that's going on in my world. That's not right. I need to learn more about it. And going out and seeking the information is every individual's responsibility to educate themselves, so that there isn't this huge amount of information that is totally hidden from people. And that is where it ends up not being safe for children or whoever who's been affected by these awful crimes. That's where it's not safe for them to speak out, because then they're speaking to people who are totally scary to them because they don't get it. It's like if you're still connected to the matrix, you are dangerous. And it's kind of what it ends up being like.
And if you're a child, you have no idea that this is wrong, that's happening to you. It feels wrong to you, and then you become scared of all the adults. The children really can't, they don't understand that they can't process it. Like for you to process this, it took years, right? What happened to you. So just like that, every other child, whatever the trauma that they go through, it takes them years to like put all the pieces together. So when they do start speaking out, somebody has to listen to them. Somebody has to take them seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So yeah. Anyways, is there anything else that you want to add to this?
When I first started remembering the trauma that happened to me in this life, I wasn't even having a memory. There was just, I was in a room. It was the room that I was abused in for so long, or so many different periods of time. And a really awful feeling was coming over me. And I just kept telling myself, okay, I'm safe. My body is okay. No one's here. I'm by myself. And I just kept telling myself, whatever this is, I didn't even realize it was a memory coming up, but it was just, whatever this is, I would rather know and understand and feel this feeling than not know. I would rather be informed. I would rather know. I would rather be aware than to be ignorant and hiding and not fully myself. So I think that, if people can get on board with, I would rather know and face whatever the consequences of knowing is than to be ignorant.
Yeah.
Just, I would rather know than be ignorant. It would do everyone a lot better.
Yeah, a lot of people like to sweep things under the rug, and sometimes if you really speak up like you're doing, if people speak up, then a lot more people would be brave enough to come forward and say, yeah, that happened to me too, and people can collectively, help or do something to change the circumstance, because it's very.
Yeah, I know that, let's see, my situation was so strange because it's almost like I was a victim of my family and the information that specific people had gotten a hold of, but I was also a victim of the death cult. But they were also trying to groom me for something like how they use the trauma to heighten your senses and stuff like that. I know I was never put in a position where I was forced to do something, although they tried to convince me that I was never put in a position where I was forced to do something that was illegal and they had evidence against me or anything like that. And I know that that does happen, but I think that if more people who have been directly involved not necessarily from the victim standpoint, but the other standpoint, I think that if more of those people would grow some balls and speak up and say, this is what happened to me, you know, whatever, not even this is necessarily what I've done, but this is how I got from being born as a, you know, somewhat normal human being into progressively manipulated and abused myself, into the point where I had this association with these people and came into this knowledge about how they're running things, and share that. More people need to be speaking up very much more directly about how they became involved.
And for you
Because it's
to
really
even
sad.
come to do this interview, it took a lot of work for like months. You were working on this to come to the
Yeah.
point where you were going to come forward, because it's like the society is so judgmental that it's very difficult for victims to come forward.
I had to be very, very solid in myself and my own knowing. I mean, not like out of fear of being challenged, but understanding, like ultimately understanding what it is that I'm saying and what it is that I went through. I think there were a few different times I was like, okay, I'm ready to do this. And then I would, you know, just go back and listen to the past life thing, or I would, you know, just kind of mentally start preparing myself. What am I going to say? What am I going to talk about? What are the points? And boom, a whole nother level of understanding would start coming to me. And I'm like, oh, wait, I've got to focus on myself again. I have processing more. It takes a lot. It really does. And the willingness to feel the fears that come up and not see it as endless shadow work. And you know, sometimes I still question, like, what good is this going to do if we're trying to legalize people eating people? I don't know what good I can do, but I know that it's really important. I suppose if I can help any one person begin speaking out also, that then I've done something positive.
Yeah, because there's a lot more people who are afraid to speak up. So you did a wonderful thing by coming forward, and it's very brave of you. I want everyone to understand that it is very difficult as a victim to, first of all, process and come to terms with what happened and heal from it, and to come forward to speak about it. It takes a
Even
lot of work. It takes
it's more simple, like, you know, say a questionable family member was babysitting you, and just, you know, oh goodness, I have a friend who, you know, feels awful about feeling so awful about just being touched one time in a place that wasn't even that bad. You know, it's all awful. And that alone is difficult.
I mean, I understand the depth of these scars, because every time I do a QHHT session, especially for light workers who had to go through a lot more than an average person, there, when we get to the healing part, there are so many things that, you know, we have to heal, let go, and there's a lot of things, like issues like, you know, unworthiness, self-blame, to so many different things, that it takes a lot to speak about these type of things, because they're so personal, you know. So thank you,
Yeah.
Candi, for coming forward.
Yeah, it has been hard. It's been many, many years that I've wanted to do this. I just have only over the past few years began to start understanding the gravity of the situation that I've been in, and how important it is for me to speak out, not only for myself, but also for other people. It's really very, very important to me.
So yeah, so you can check out Candi's bio and her links down below. And we want to thank Candi for coming to do this video. And on behalf of everyone else that you are going to be helping by sharing your story, I say thank you. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. This is Madhu, and this is Candi from AdiYogiAyurveda. I'll talk to you next time.
Bye.